From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. If you have any questions you'd like to ask or advice you'd like to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join our conversation. Today, we record episode 20. We have made it. So this episode is dedicated to all those people who said we couldn't do it, that we were stupid for trying, and that we were going to fail miserably. I'm talking to you, Mom.
Yeah. Happy Mother's Day.
I'm just kidding. I love you, Mom. And now,
I love you too, Nick's mom.
Broadcasting from Level 9 Studios, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Has your mom discovered the podcast?
Nope.
Mine did. She did. My sister sent it to her. And so my mom, went through this whole thing where she called. She's like, hey, I listened to your radio show. And I was like, cool. Thanks.
Well, my mom either hasn't or she's too disappointed to talk to me about it.
That's the more likely explanation is she knows all about it, but she chooses not to ask. She's
like most people in America, she chooses to pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's what it is. Most Americans know about pod therapy, but you don't bring it up in polite conversation.
Maybe it'll go away if you just don't give it any
look
attention.
At them, don't look them in the eye. Eventually, they'll peter themselves out. So, but happy Mother's Day to all the mommies out there. Congrats,
yeah, definitely.
And all the moms to be. You are good people, and we are grateful that you continue to populate the human race. So, thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You did something special for your wife, I assume?
Yeah. We definitely did the whole Mother's Day thing. I took her out to the Bellagio. We went to that crazy arboreum thing where you can see the beautiful trees and plants and exhibits, and it was really pretty. And we took her out for breakfast and brunch, then did a barbecue thing and stuff too. So, did your dogs do anything nice for you?
No.
Oh.
No.
Oh, geez. Maybe they forgot. Hey,
probably.
You're not forgotten though. Yeah, I'm with you in spirit. So, did you call your mom?
Yeah, I did.
All right, that's a good something. I called mine.
Did something.
I totally did that. So,
yeah.
Yep.
I'm a terrible son. I should have done more than call.
Yeah. Well, I actually have a financial arrangement with my sister. I don't remember birthdays or Mother's Days or anything. She does, and she just sends me the bill. And so now that we've discovered Venmo, she just texts me and says, hey, you owe me this much. And I don't even know what we got her. I have no clue what the deal is. I just Venmo her cash. And the best thing about Venmo is you can say what the money is for. And so I always write illicit drugs, political influence, hush money. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it's been
a
great
good plan.
It's a really good arrangement. My mom still gives me all the credit though. She goes, you're such a great guy. You got me this. I'm like, hey, happy Hanukkah or whatever it is.
So Carrie, if you're listening, hint, hint.
Yeah. Is that your sister?
Yep.
Yeah. Come on. We can work this out. Yeah. No, it's funny, though, because my sister, she'll get my mom something. In this case, she got her this ticket to go out and do this design and wine thing where you paint and you get to drink wine. And my grandmother's going with her, too. And my sister got her a card that says, hey, we hope you guys enjoy this, blah, blah, blah. Happy Mother's Day from Maddie. And then underneath it, in parentheses, it says, financed by Jim. That's all I get. But it's plenty. I'm fine with this. The fact that I was even involved at all is acceptable.
That's awesome.
Yep. So happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, it's worked out so far.
All right. So let's get into our opening segment.
Yeah.
Some research that came in. We should just call this segment Into the Weeds.
Oh, okay.
Because we're going to get into the weeds a little bit.
It's very weedy. Yeah. This is a weedy segment.
Yeah.
But yeah, fresh off the headlines, man. This was ripped right out of the news.
MSNBC?
Yeah.
I think. So MSNBC published a study that Blue Cross Blue Shield, the insurance provider, did. And they found that depression they call an epidemic in America. Mm-hmm. So they did this study among millions of their customers and discovered that depression has risen dramatically among all age groups. So here are some really interesting findings, which I already kind of suspected that.
Anecdotally, as therapists, we see it so much, but it's interesting for the insurance company to come out and say, hey, listen, we did the survey and we're looking at our records, when this is diagnosed, and holy cow, it's on the rise.
And not only on the rise, but by a lot. That's the thing that stuck out to me. So one of the things that they found is the diagnosis of major depression has risen dramatically by 33% since 2013.
Holy crap.
Which wasn't all that long ago.
Dude,
so
that's
33%.
insane. Like if you told me right now, hey, diabetes is up 33% in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's a public health crisis.
my God. Yeah, shut the country down. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. 2.6% of youth aged 12 to 17 were diagnosed with major depression in 2016, a 63% increase
Oh, my God.
from 1.6% in 2013.
So that's people 12 to 17. So that's the kids. That's the
Right.
teenagers.
So that's our adolescent population
63% increase.
in 3 years.
Oh, my gosh.
Right. They also found that among young adults aged 18 to 34, 4.4% had major depression in 2016 compared to 3% in 2013. So that's a 47% increase.
Dude, this is that. Wait, so that's like the working adults, like 18 to 34.
Right.
Wow.
So that's our millennials.
Oh my gosh, that is insane. I think that's the millennials. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
And the highest percentage of major depression diagnosis were among people aged 35 to 49. So the survey found that 5.8% of 35 to 49-year-olds had major depression in 2016 compared to 4.6% 3 years before.
Oh my gosh, that is
So
amazing.
from 4.6% to 5.8.
Jeez, that's incredible, man. So it sounds like all total together, 33% increase in depression nationally whenever they slice it out between all the different demographics. And this is no joke. Blue Cross Blue Shield is a national heavy insurance. They see everybody in every state. That is incredible information. Oh my gosh. But anecdotally, I think as therapists, you and I see this every day. I mean, it is probably, I would say it is the second most common thing that I bump into. Anxiety would be a close second,
Right.
I think. But depression is right there. And they tend to play together. Depression and anxiety tend to kind of be two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. They very, like you said, we see it all the time.
Gosh, it's like every day.
Frequently. Yeah.
So, in this kind of study, Nick, I mean, when you're seeing like this much data, with this incredible spike, and you kind of look at that just from your therapist chair as a guy who sees this and treats this. If you had to make some guesses and say, what do we attribute some of this to? I mean, do you think that there's a portion of this this has always been here, but now we know how to diagnose it, and so maybe there's more reporting going on, and that's contributing to the rise? Or how do you unpack some of that? What do you think?
I think that's probably part of it. I mean, obviously, the better that we get at being able to detect something,
Right.
we're going to see a rise in whatever it is that we're detecting.
Yes.
But I think that's only a small piece. Actually, the article really digs into some other factors that I think are really interesting, and I totally agree with, which is just the way that our culture has kind of shifted. We're not as community-based anymore as we used to be. The article kind of talks about that, touches base with that a little bit. Now, in some sense, we are more connected with people through social media.
Right.
But it's a very artificial connection.
Yeah, sometimes that's like a toxic connection.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think it is. And we've talked about it on this show before, how, when you were looking through social media, it has been linked to increased depression. There are studies out there that will support that simply because it makes sense. You are comparing your life to other people's highlight reel.
Right.
Everybody's posting the highlights of of what's going on.
Right.
In
You
their
once
world.
said comparing your backstage to other people's front stage.
Right.
That's not fair.
Right.
That's not. But that's what we do because we're looking at their highlight and going, oh well, I didn't eat chicken fricassee for lunch. I had a Big Mac or whatever. Like my life sucks. But so the article specifically in the study, it sounds like they unpacked that as one of the things that might contribute to it.
Yeah, and I think that mixed with the fact that we aren't as community based, and we see that a lot now. In our neighborhoods, right? I mean, for example, how many of your neighbors do you know personally?
Just one.
Right.
Yeah.
And how odd that is, and especially here in Vegas, like where, for those of you who aren't from the Las Vegas area, if you go in your backyard, what do you have? You've got a brick wall
Right.
separating your property from everybody else's. You can't even see your neighbors.
But I think your point still writes larger for the nation in the sense that culturally we're not the same people that we used to be, you know, in the sense that we're not connected as much. It's funny you mentioned how many neighbors do you know. Remember the other day when we were driving to sushi and that random Mustang pulled up and started waving at me? That was my neighbor.
Right.
His name's Cam. He's a neat guy. Yeah, I was a son's soccer coach back in the day, so that's how I know him. But so that's an interesting point. So the depression epidemic is on the rise, like vigorously. I mean, we're talking 33% increase in 5 years. That's insane. Like that outpaces everything. The only thing that might even hold a candle to that is the opiate epidemic. And so, but depression, I think it bumps into everything else because I think you and I very rarely just see a person struggling with depression. If they're going through depression, it's very common that they self-medicate with alcohol, with drugs, with marijuana. They sometimes develop an unhealthy relationship even with psychiatric meds. They usually have absenteeism from work or they're underperforming. Their marriages struggle. Their families struggle. Everything in life. It's a cascade effect of depression. It's not this one little bottled up problem that doesn't touch anything else. It sort of bleeds into everything.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, everything you just mentioned as far as relationships, how they function at work, just how they function in society.
Right. Yeah. And then, you know, another part of it too, when we're talking about what depression is, and that was something you and I were kind of chit-chatting about on the way here, was sort of that myth. Like, when is it depression and when is it not?
Yeah, so if we're going to have that conversation, we should probably dig into the weeds a little bit and kind of describe what a therapist would look for and how we diagnose depression. Because it's not simply, you know, I think a lot of people will say that, you know, like, well, I'm going through depression because my dog died.
Right.
That's not really clinical depression.
Right. And that's actually a good point. In the study, if you listened carefully to what Nick said, he said they were diagnosed with, and this is a quote, major depression disorder. And so this is a good point. Like, if you're listening to the news in the world, you're going to hear the news reporters say, hey, this is this epidemic, this is going on. Since you're listening to pod therapy, I think what we can do differently is we can also unpack how do we medically classify this. This report, this research comes from an insurance group, right? So they're saying people like Nick and Jim reported depression to us and billed us for it this often, right? And so that starts with us. We're the gatekeepers of what this means. So Nick just raised a good point. In life, I think depression is this very common word for us. And so most of us are comfortable saying, you know, I've been really depressed lately. You know, since the you know, Packers lost the Super Bowl, I've been, you know, really depressed lately, or, you know, my dog died. I've been really, and that's not to minimize those things. You know, that's a real event in your life. But I think it becomes this confusing, muddied word where we're not always sure what depression is. So, Nick, why don't we actually go through some of that? Let's talk about some of the symptoms that you and I are looking for when we're going to diagnose depression. So, you know, we could talk about anhedonia. That's one. Maybe you can define that for folks so they can understand that. That's a jargony word for us.
Yeah, so anhedonic is basically just completely flat.
Yeah.
Right? So like dysthymia is, I always get those two kind of confused. So like...
Yeah. So, yeah, for the listener, this is fun. I love when we get the jargon. So, anhedonia, like Nick said, it's flatness. And so what that means to us is like pleasure deafness. It's like, so hedonia actually comes from Latin, right, or actually Greek, and hedonism, right, pleasure, like, sex and fun. Anhedonia means lack of. So it's a lack of pleasure.
So just not finding pleasure in it.
So if you find that you're pleasure deaf, things that you used to enjoy you don't enjoy, you're just kind of flat and despondent, that is a criteria. That is something we're looking for. And if we're seeing that, we're paying attention to that, we're starting to formulate that diagnosis. Dysthymia is a different form of depression. And what the listener probably doesn't know is that there's actually lots of different kinds of depression. And Nick and I actually, you know, we'll go through it and we'll slice this thing pretty thin. You can have major depression disorder. You can have dysthymia with rapid cycling. You can have a version of bipolar. You can have acute depressive disorder. There's lots of different ways. You can have adjustment disorder. And so these all kind of come from different places and they all kind of have different criteria. When we're talking about major depression, this is what you as a person in America are usually associating with that concept of like a long-lasting blues where this person's life is kind of falling apart. So criteria that we're kind of looking for, and again, the first thing we're looking for is overtime. If you're having a bad weekend, Nick's not going to diagnose you with depression and call your insurance. Like that's not what we're looking for. We're usually looking for over 6 months. We're looking for symptoms, things that show us that your life is kind of changing. So a depressed mood, just feeling low, emptiness, hopelessness, anhedonia, which is that loss of pleasure, not feeling any hope in life, any happiness in life, no joy. If we see weight loss or significant weight gain, that can tell us that